when you go out there and worrying about inches and feet and trying to maximize cooler space to help make your customer's operation more organized and efficient. So welcome, thanks everyone for being here. We're going to formally kick it off. I'm here with Mike Ward, our food service market manager, and Rob Kalisavich, our senior product manager for open storage. We're your storage nerds, and we're going to take you through. So we're excited about today. It's about cooler capacity. It's a very expensive footprint in the restaurant, and there's never been anyone that has said that there was enough dry, refrigerated, or frozen storage. Every consultant, every dealer designer ever has never had enough dry or refrigerated storage in the restaurant. Funny picture here of an Instagram influencer who, around Thanksgiving, they get so many turkeys in their freezer that they literally have to climb Turkey Box Mountain in the freezer just to get to the product that they need. So a bit of an exaggeration, but we've all experienced this, obviously, at some point. So why can't we get this right? It's very hard to estimate this in the design phase. If you think about what is the volume of product that you're going to have to store, there are so many variables that we have to deal with that actual process in the design phase is very challenging. Even if you do that, the ongoing maintenance of a cooler to keep it efficiently stored takes a lot of planning and a lot of work. So it does become very easy to waste space in a cooler. And then often, you know, as a business grows, we add new menu items, which requires more supply items. A restaurant begins offering to-go and delivery. And with that, the space needed grows. But the space needed may grow, but the space available is not growing until you're going to start busting down walls and expanding the space. So once you're in, once you're into the space you're in, there's not a whole, so you got to work with the space you got to work with the space you've got. So again, we talk about lots of variables. How are we supposed to figure this out? All you really know when you're opening a new concept is, well, how many seats, and based on how many seats, for example, how many meals per week, and then how many deliveries to estimate the need. And what is it? Is it square feet of storage area? Is it linear feet of storage shelving? So we're going to walk through some of this today. And I do apologize, and I'll just confess, I was an engineer in college, so I got kind of excited about getting to do some algebra. So do bear with me. I do think that there is a benefit at the end of the day to taking you through this, and hopefully not like a Goodwill Hunting kind of way. So when we say linear feet of shelving, we're just talking about this red dashed line here, which is the linear feet of facings that are going around a space. This isn't that applicable to what we're trying to do. Linear feet does matter. Facings do matter when you have a number of supply items, but this is really more of an important metric in like a retail display type environment. What matters in our situation is the total volume, which is usable square footage of storage, and then what is the vertical space associated with that. So in the math today, you're going to see a lot of metrics on square footage, and the usable square footage is just what I've highlighted here in these red dashed lines around the shelving. Obviously, you need aisleways and ability to access these things, so most of your cooler space is occupied by aisleways. And so it's always about this trade-off between aisleways and shelving, but you need to give people safe ways to access their equipment. Those aisleways are usually minimum of 36, sometimes 42 inches recommended. And so that is the major driver of not being able to occupy a lot of that footprint in that refrigerated space. In this example, and today we're going to spend a lot of time, Metro works with people every day on maximizing what they can get. So there's this fraction of usable square footage. There's just the math, a simple example. There's 24 square feet of shelving within a 36 square foot cooler, so it's 2/3 or 67%.
We have two people say they can't see right here. I'm seeing and hearing everything.
Okay. For the folks that are having trouble, we'll just get them the recording afterwards on that. So sorry for the folks that can't hear. We'll get to the recording afterwards. We checked with a few people in the room. It's still coming through broadcasting to, we think, the majority. So the issue, what I showed you in this prior page is a fairly small cooler, 6x6. So you don't have a lot of options, and there's not really a whole long aisle or complicated aisle system. It's just one small one. As a cooler gets larger, because aisles will start to consume more and more, if you're going with a standard U layout, that efficiency is going to decrease as you go. So that's why you need to go with a slightly more complex layout and work with someone who lays out coolers for a living to make sure that you make the most out of every inch. That's a little bit where Metro comes in. I'm calling this the Metro zone. It's this space above the standard line where your Metro rep can help you get creative in how you make use of that extra space, either a W style layout or track shelving or something along those lines. So there are equations that consultants and designers use when they try to figure this out, to figure out the square feet of storage area required. There's a couple of, so on the surface, this appears simple. What is the volume of a meal? So there's industry standard numbers for what the volume of a meal is. What's the number of meals between deliveries? That constitutes the total volume of what has to be stored. And then you divide that by the height and then the floor area, and that's how you decide basically how big your storerooms need to be. But in each one of these cases, there is just tremendous variability in what factors you can use. The volume per meal, you would think 0.1 cubic feet per meal would cover it, but what about menu complexity as you add supply items to offer more diversity to your customers? What about when you add all these disposable cups, disposable clamshells, utensils? Where is all that stored? All of those things inflate. And so now maybe that 0.1 cubic feet per meal isn't enough. You know, we're going through this to why do we fall short? Why do we fail to plan enough space in the cooler? Number of meals between deliveries is not easy. Seats, utilization, table turnovers, all that stuff. And then lastly, there's this, and as you're doing to go and delivery, how much of your business is that, and how much is that going to grow over time, and do you have the storage footprint to handle that? On the bottom half is where Metro lives, right? This usable height. So coolers are generally between 7 and 8 feet, but a lot of that's, you know, there's a condenser coil in there. You need 6 inches off the floor, so you're losing some space off the bat. And you've all been in coolers when there's just lots of airspace between shelves. So Metro comes in, that percent efficiency of space between shelves, we spend a lot of time there. We think about that a lot. We design our products for that. So it's an area that we can definitely help in this equation. And then same thing. So we help people figure out dead space in quarters, what type of layout they should use. But if you don't think about these things, they're going to chew up space on you. So we spend a lot of time on the bottom half of this equation to make you more efficient. So this page is for the people who have to plan these things. Just understand the challenge that they face. With any model, any calculation you do, it's garbage in, garbage out. One bad assumption can really kill you. And this graph is trying to show, so my x-axis here is the number of seats in a restaurant. My y-axis is total storage square footage needed. And it's a model based on, well, so that it's on this assumption of what is the cubic feet per meal. The industry standard is 0.1, but with all the other things we talked about, if you factor those in, your storage requirements escalate radically as the size of a typical meal grows, just as one example. Similarly, if you start doing more to-go, maybe at the beginning of your business, your to-go was only 10%, but then you got bigger and to-go became 25%, maybe as much as 50% of what you do. Again, your storage requirements are going to change dramatically here based on how much to-go you're doing. If this isn't planned in, you're going to end up in a place where there's not enough space. People have come to us and asked for guidance, like what do you use? What statistics do you have? If you make some conservative assumptions about all these things, because these rules don't work unless they're simple. So just something that you could remember easily and just check if you have a design to see and if it seems undersized. So we've got some safety factors built into this, but basically our rule is, I'm calling it the rule of 2. If you multiply the number of seats by 2, that should approximate about the maximum total storage of square footage that you might need. So to explain that, if you're in a 50-seat restaurant, you'll need about 50 square feet of dry storage, so that's 10 by 5, and roughly 50 square feet of refrigerated frozen, you know, so another around 10 by 5, 6 by 8, something like that. So that's the math. We'll leave that. I'd be curious to get some feedback on the rule of 2 to see what you guys think about that at the end. If that's a simplifier, that might. Now, in reality, this isn't going to be practical because as the footprint is forced to shrink because of it, like people are going to really be working at 1.5 or something like that. And then Metro can come in and help make the most out of the space that you've been allotted to work with for food storage. So that's the layout part. Now we're going to move over to vertical space. Refrigerator space is the most expensive, so let's not waste that vertical space that we have. In this image here, what do you see? You see prepped foods here, and once food is prepped, you can't put boxes on top. This is where some of that wasted airspace comes in. So prepped food's a common cause. Here's a sheet pan rack over here, but there's some space above the sheet pan rack that we're not using because there's not space above it. And then what happens, you end up with stuff on the floor, which is not what we want to see. And we also talk about menu complexity and growth. This is from Technomic about what are some of the changes that have happened recently. We're all good about adding to our menus. Like manufacturers, we add products, but it's very hard to go back and say, oh, I don't want to necessarily sell that thing anymore. Restaurants have the same issue, and I found it interesting that of all the things that they've done with COVID, like, yes, there have been a number of people who have reduced their number of menu items, but giving things up is just something hard for humans to do. And so, like, the thing that was done the least by operators during this time was reducing the number of menu items. But it's part of the healthy running of any business to reduce spoilage, reduce cash flow. Like, reducing menu complexity is a way to handle some of these capacity issues that you might run into. But with that, so let's assume the scenario where Metro's brought in is normally that, okay, I don't have enough space or I'm having some efficiency problems. Can you help me make the most of what I got? So the rest of the presentation is really going to be, how do I make the most of what I got? So first thing first, optimize your layout. A couple components there. It's the right depth of shelving. By default, people go to 18 and 24. There's other depths that you can consider. Keeping your corners open with S-hooks. Using rolling track shelving. Those are the three primary tactics in getting the layout and the footprint right. Once you've done that, there's other tactics for maximizing the vertical space. How you adjust the shelving when that happens, extra tiers as needed, and either docking stations, overhead shelving stations. Lastly, don't forget about mobile. It will help the workflow of your restaurant if that shelving can go into the cooler and come out versus using all stationary units. So planning for mobility and making sure that shelving can come in and out is really important. So we'll walk through each of these in turn here. So this is that equation that we walked through earlier. I want to try to put some practical examples on this. So these orange variables are the ones that Metro can control. So this is the space efficiency of the vertical height. This is the usable storeroom floor. If you're in a less efficient scenario, the numbers are more like 70 and 47. So in this scenario, 75-seat restaurant, it's saying we're around close to 150 square feet needed. If you work with Metro, we can give you tricks to maximize more of that vertical space, get more of that storeroom floor area used, and then you need less square feet. In this example, so just how much these small improvements in efficiency matter, the two of them combined, it's a combined 30% reduction in the storage footprint. If you could have planned that up front, you could have bought a smaller cooler, but if you're already stuck with this smaller cooler that is only giving you 100 square feet, it gives you the targets you need to get to deliver efficiency and store things properly. Something to think about with this too, like in any kind of estimation process, there is a safety factor. In the guidelines that I was able to find through research, they don't plan a safety factor into this, so it's something for people to think about as they're doing their planning. So we're going to talk about dead space and corners first here. So the idea is you saw that post that was there obstructing the access in the corner, but when you use X hooks, you could take that post away and you could keep those corners open and you could avoid being cornered by a lack of space. That animation was a little quick, so we will try that again. So it's common to just, because Metro shelving has 4 posts, 4 shelves in most cases. So there's this post here, and what this post obstruction does, it makes it hard to access and it's hard to get big boxes back there. So you end up with some of this corner space being dead. This is especially important in small corners where the square footage is so limited to begin with. So the idea is if you get those posts out of there, put S-hooks in. I'll show you what an S-hook looks like on the next page. That dead space is now open because people can access it, boxes can flow easily through there, and you can keep that space open. So obviously many of you are very familiar, but what is an S-hook? It is a very simple small piece of metal. It is shaped like an S. It hangs over the wire frame snake on one shelf and attaches onto the other, and it essentially replaces a post. There is no drop in capacity from using an S-hook. They are different per model. The standard one, Metro wire that you're used to, is this basic S-hook that you see here, 9995Z. There are other models depending on what the shelf is. If you're trying to attach to a shelf with Max Q or Pro, there is this Pro/Q S-hook. It needs a bigger gap so that it could go around the polymer mat on the shelf, and it's locking, you can see, with a wing nut. Max 4 has a special corner kit, one that hooks into the corner, another one that actually hooks on the shelf. You see that one down here when you're trying to do a corner on Max 4. Similarly, Max I has a corner kit. The regular collar hooks look the same as this one with a slightly different geometry, but if you're trying to do a corner, you do need the special corner kits. That's something that people forget. They try to order these top SKUs to do a corner, and you actually need these special corner kits to do a corner. So that's it for open corners. I'm going to transition over to rolling track shelving. So what is rolling track shelving? And then we'll try to explain why it adds a benefit. So rolling track shelving is just that. The shelving is on wheels, and it nests within a track overhead, and the aisles can move back and forth. So it lets you put more shelving in the same space while still maintaining ADA compliance. Metro for food service, Metro really pushes the top track system. It's better for sanitation, because if you're using a floor track system like some of our competitors, that's obviously a big dirt trap. And also it's safer that employees are going to trip over it. So in food service, it's much more common to install top track shelving. And from a math basis, you get 10 to 30% more usable storage per square foot by using track systems. Just to try to show you how that actually gets calculated, here's an example of a large cooler that's long and narrow, 10 by 24. In this case, if you put top track down one of the sides, it's a 26% improvement in usable square footage. The red here is dead space that's not being utilized. So here, because we're basically taking the shelves that would be along the wall, we're turning them horizontally, and they're mobile. So the M represents mobile in this chart. And it's because you're taking that ADA, that wasted aisle space, and because it's active, you can get more space and still maintain ADA compliance. That's where the savings comes from. Here's another example where they've gone with a double wide track system, and they got a 25% improvement over what they'd done prior. To show you what that looks like in practice, this cooler that we talked about at the beginning, we went with one wall of stationary shelving down the side and then a wall of top track on the other side for, again, that 25% improvement gain in this particular situation. Another example that was done recently, they went with a double track system in this case as well, a major improvement in storage efficiency. These things are hard to configure, so we can encourage you to work with your Metro rep in getting them configured. We have set up some standard configurations and models. So if you're looking for a 10-foot model, a 12-foot model, 14, 16, Metro has set up some standard configurations. But you could do this with any shelving system that Metro has, and in any size. It has immense flexibility, and your Metro sales rep can help you figure out how that is done. So now we're going to transition quickly to vertical space. What I mean by vertical space is all the goods you're trying to store are different sizes. And if you think critically about how things should be set up and how many tiers you use, so some operators get very sophisticated about trying to scale this across, let's say, a large number of chains, and they plan out where everything should go. So a simple 5-shelf unit on the left, 4 is standard, 5 is becoming more common, but this operator was going with 6 and 7 shelves in many situations so that they could store things more efficiently. Even here you can see on the right that just the efficiency of access, that all of these items are the same, they're all item type B. They were able to pull each of those off the rack, so you didn't have to, just for better flow in the process. And they were all mobile throughout as well. So how do you adjust shelving? Well, Metro offers a couple of shelving options that are very easy to adjust. One of the best ones for the cooler is Max Q. It has a no-tool, easy adjust lever. A bit of a trouble with standard collar-based shelving. If you put heavy weight on a shelf for a long time, it may become difficult to adjust over time. When you use something like Q that has the no-tool, easy adjust lever, regardless of weight or how long it's been held, you're going to be able to move that shelving. When do you do it? After initial cooler load and after major menu changes, is when you want to think about resetting your cooler. Max Q is a great product for the cooler. That's another shot here of what that lever looks like. Q is designed for the cooler. It's got a 20-year rust protection warranty. Other ways to take advantage of vertical space, we call these docking stations or overhead racks or overhead shelving stations. What they help you do, every cooler, almost any cooler should have some type of sheet pan rack or bun pan rack in it. Bun pan racks are great for storing prepped food. In most cases, they're better than shelving for storing prepped food, but don't waste that space above the sheet pan rack. You can get another two shelving tiers above that, and it's another way just to get more space back in the cooler. From a 5S perspective, it also gives a place for these sheet pan racks to go, just for better workflow, so they're always going back to the place that they belong. We're coming out with more sizes of these overhead racks. So in a couple of weeks, there'll be more models and sizes so that these things become very easy to order. These will be pre-configured with the Super Recta Pro shelving, which is easy to clean with a removable mat. Additionally, it's about maintaining mobility. And so again, in that cooler, what's the height of your door? Something else to consider. Most doors are 76 inches high. There are some smaller coolers that have shorter doors. But so we're doing two options. So the trouble is some people would just go with a 74-inch post in a mobile situation. If you do that, you will not get that shelf out of the cooler. So we're trying to say use a 63-inch mobile post or a 70-inch mobile post, because those posts with a 5-inch caster will keep you at a height that you're going to get in and out of that door easily. If you can't get out of the door, you lose a lot of the benefit of having that mobile shelf in the cooler. That is it for the webinar. So I will check the Q&A in a little bit, but we have a couple promos going on for our school customers. We have a cabinet promo, and we have a delivery and holding promo on Mighty Lights. So don't forget to tell your customers about these, or ask your rep and they could get you these details. If you want to learn more, all this information is on metro.com. Track shelving, walk-in cooler shelving, lots of data there for everyone. Our next webinar, we know it's summer season, so folks are on vacation, so the next one will be 3 weeks. And so in 3 weeks, we're going to talk about all of our smart solutions using 3-sided frames. It's another one. It's a trick about taking advantage of vertical space, taking advantage of products that have wheels, and squeezing out every inch out of a restaurant. So the Metro has lots of different solutions that utilize 3-sided frames, and we'll take you through those in 3 weeks. And with that, I'll open up for questions and just want to say thank you to everyone.